Keanu Reeves stops at a McDonald's for a quiet meal when a shy 5-year-old boy suddenly slips into his booth and whispers a single chilling sentence in his ear. In that moment, Keanu realizes the child is in serious danger, and the man pretending to be his father is not who he claims to be. Turning pale, he immediately dials 911, setting off a chain of events no one in the restaurant will ever forget. People talk about movie heroes like they're another species, like they live in some other world. But that afternoon, Keanu Reeves pushed open the smudged glass door of a McDonald's like any tired stranger just trying to grab a quiet meal and disappear for a while. He kept his head down, baseball cap pulled low, backpack over one shoulder, the faint smell of rain still clinging to his hoodie. The place was busy in that chaotic, ordinary way, kids arguing over Happy Meal toys, fries crackling in the oil, someone's phone playing a tinny pop song in the corner. Keanu loved this kind of noise. It meant nobody expected anything from him. No red carpet, no cameras, no questions about the next big project. Just an anonymous line, a cheap coffee, and maybe 10 minutes to breathe. At the counter, the teenage cashier glanced up, did a double take, and then tried way too hard not to do a triple take. Keanu gave a small, tired smile, the kind of smile that said, "Please don't make this awkward." "Just a filet-o-fish, medium fries, and a coffee, please," he said, voice soft but clear. The kid nodded quickly, cheeks flushing, suddenly hyper-focused on the register like it was a bomb he might accidentally detonate. Keanu chuckled under his breath. Fame was strange. People turned nervous around you, when half the time you were more nervous than they were. He took his tray to a booth in the back, the one under the buzzing fluorescent light that flickered every few seconds. He didn't mind. Flickering lights, greasy tables, chipped red plastic, there was something honest about it. He set his backpack down, slid into the booth, and let out a long breath he didn't know he'd been holding. This was his favorite kind of quiet, the kind that happened in public where nobody really looked closely, where you could sit with your own thoughts and pretend life was simple. It wasn't simple, of course. Not for him, not for anyone. As he unwrapped his burger, his mind drifted, as it always did, to faces that no longer sat across from him. A daughter he never got to watch grow up. A woman he had loved and lost. Whole futures erased in a few terrible moments. Grief had carved deep lines into him, but it had also left something softer behind, a painful tenderness for every small, fragile life he saw out in the world. Especially children. Especially the ones who seemed afraid. That was why, when the boy caught his eye, Keanu noticed him instantly. He couldn't have been more than 5. Dark hair a little too long, falling into his eyes. A red t-shirt with a faded cartoon dinosaur, skinny arms wrapped around himself like he was trying to stay as small as possible. He sat 2 booths away with a man who looked at first glance like any other tired adult on a bad day, unshaven, heavy jacket, phone face down on the table. But the air between them felt wrong. The boy's Happy Meal box sat unopened. He kept glancing at the man's hands instead of the food, flinching slightly every time the man shifted, like he was bracing for something. Keanu told himself not to stare. It wasn't his business. He picked up his burger, forced his eyes back to the tray. Still, he couldn't help noticing details. A yellowish bruise peeking from under the boy's sleeve when he reached for a napkin. The man leaning in too close, lips moving fast, voice low and harsh, making the boy's shoulders fold inward even tighter. Nothing visible enough to call out, not yet. Just that heavy, familiar pressure in Keanu's chest. That sense, born from years of watching and listening, that something was off. He tried to focus on his food, on the burned edge of the fries, on the way the coffee smelled a little like cardboard. He told himself stories to calm down. Maybe it's just a bad day. Maybe the kid is shy. Maybe the bruise is from the playground, but the boy's eyes kept finding him. Quick, secret glances, not the wide, excited look of a child who spots a movie star. This was different. This was a look that said, "Please, please see me. Please understand." Then, without warning, the man's hand shot out and gripped the boy's wrist, fingers digging in just a little too tight. It wasn't a slap, it wasn't a punch, nothing dramatic that would make the whole restaurant gasp. It was worse than that. It was quiet, contained, the kind of thing that could be ignored by everyone who didn't want trouble. The boy's face didn't even change. Only his knuckles whitened as he tried not to pull away. Keanu's stomach twisted. He felt that old conflict rise up, the battle between "I don't want to cause a scene" and "I will not sit here and do nothing." People had looked away from him once when life hit him harder than he thought he could stand. A nurse who wouldn't meet his eyes, a stranger in a waiting room pretending not to see a man breaking down. He promised himself, on a night when grief felt like drowning, that he wouldn't become that kind of person. The man released the boy's wrist and stood up, muttering something about going to the bathroom under his breath. His eyes swept the restaurant once, cold and suspicious, before he walked away. The boy stayed frozen for a long second, eyes fixed on the table. Then very slowly he turned his head toward Keanu, and this time he didn't look away. Keanu felt his heartbeat pick up. He gave the smallest nod he could manage. Not a big, dramatic gesture, just a gentle, "You're not invisible." The boy swallowed hard. His lower lip trembled. And then, in a tiny act of rebellion that must have cost him the bravest part of his little heart, he slid out of his side of the booth, feet barely touching the floor, and walked toward Keanu. Every step he took felt loud, even though his sneakers barely made a sound. Keanu's whole body went still. He didn't move, didn't want to spook him. The boy climbed awkwardly into the booth across from him, eyes shiny with fear. Up close, Keanu could see the bruise on his wrist more clearly now, a dark ring where fingers had been. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely a whisper. Are you really him?" the boy asked, glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to drag him away at any second. Keanu softened his expression, pushed his cap back just a little so the kid could see his face. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I'm Keanu." He hesitated, then added, "But you can just call me your friend for now if you want." For a heartbeat, something like wonder flickered in the boy's eyes. It was gone as fast as it came, crushed under a wave of panic. His small hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his fingers shook. "I'm not supposed to talk to anyone," he whispered. He said if I talk, bad things happen." Keanu felt a chill crawl up his spine, but he kept his voice gentle. "Do you feel safe?" he asked, choosing each word carefully. "Right now, with the man you're with, is he your dad?" The boy's face crumpled, like someone had reached inside and twisted something fragile. He leaned forward until his mouth was close to Keanu's ear. His breath trembled against Keanu's skin as he whispered the words that would change everything about that ordinary afternoon. "He's not my dad," the boy breathed. "He took me. He said if I tell he'll hurt my mom, he has a gun in his car." For a second, the entire restaurant seemed to tilt. The buzzing light overhead, the crackling fryers, the low murmur of conversations, it all faded into a distant hum. Keanu's blood ran cold. His vision sharpened, every detail snapping into agonizing focus. The bathroom door the man had vanished behind, the exit by the side, the drive-through window, the security camera in the corner. The boy's pulse hammered at his neck, wild and terrified. Keanu forced himself to breathe slowly, evenly, even as his own hands started to shake under the table. Fear clawed at him, not for himself, but for this child who had just placed all his fragile hope into the hands of a stranger in a hoodie. A stranger who just happened to be someone the world called a hero on screens, but who, in this moment, was simply a man who had to decide if he would be brave when there were no cameras rolling. He met the boy's eyes and gave the smallest nod. "Okay," he whispered. "You did the right thing telling me, stay right here, don't move, whatever happens, stay in this booth. Do you understand?" The boy swallowed and nodded, tears clinging to his lashes but not falling. He looked like he was trying to be so strong, so grown-up, it made Keanu's chest ache. With fingers that felt suddenly numb, Keanu slid his hand into his pocket and closed it around his phone. In one smooth, practiced motion, he pulled it out under the table, keeping his body between the device and the rest of the room. His thumb hovered over the screen for half a second, then pressed the numbers he'd only ever dialed in movies. Never like this, never with a child's life depending on what happened next. He put the phone to his ear, heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his head. 911, what's your emergency?" came the calm, distant voice on the other end. And as Keanu opened his mouth to speak, the bathroom door creaked open behind the boy. The bathroom door inched open just as Keanu pressed the phone tighter to his ear, pretending to scratch his cheek to hide it. The man stepped out, wiping his hands on his jeans, eyes scanning the room with that restless, paranoid flicker people get when they're expecting trouble. The boy went rigid in the booth, shoulders rising toward his ears. Keanu forced his breathing to stay slow, steady, as if they were just two strangers sharing space and silence over cheap food. He angled his head slightly away from the boy, toward the window so his lips would be hidden. "McDonald's on Westlake and 3rd, he murmured, voice low enough to blend with the restaurant noise. "Adult male, mid-40s, dark jacket, unshaven. He's with a little boy who says he's been taken. The man might have a gun in his car." It felt unreal, saying those words out loud in a place that smelled like fries and birthday parties. The dispatcher's voice sharpened immediately, questions coming crisp and controlled. But Keanu's focus was already splitting in two directions: the calm instructions in his ear and the danger walking toward their booth. The man's gaze snagged on the boy first, and a flash of something ugly passed through his eyes when he saw where the child was sitting. Then he saw Keanu. His steps faltered. Recognition hit him an instant later. The surprise on his face wasn't the excited shock of a fan. It was the wary confusion of someone suddenly realizing there was a witness with a face the whole world might recognize. Keanu let out a small, lopsided smile, the same gentle, disarming expression he'd used 1,000 times on sets and in interviews. "Hey, man," he said, lifting his free hand in a casual half-wave while keeping the phone pressed tight to his jaw. "The little guy here just wanted to say hi. Didn't mean to steal him." The boy looked at the table, breathing fast. Under the booth, his knee bounced like a trapped bird. The man's jaw clenched. "He botherin' you?" he asked, voice sticky with forced politeness. Keanu could see the muscles in his neck twitching, the way his eyes kept darting to the phone, to the door, to the windows. Fight or flight was rising in him like a tide. This was the precise moment everything could tilt from tense to terrible. In his ear, the dispatcher spoke again. "Sir, are you in immediate danger? Can the suspect hear you?" Keanu shifted his weight, letting his backpack slide closer to the edge of the seat as if he were just getting more comfortable. "No, it's all good," he said, making his tone light, almost amused, speaking to the man but answering the operator at the same time. "Just having lunch with a new little friend." He let the words "new little friend" land with a quiet emphasis. On the other end of the line, the dispatcher seemed to understand. Her voice changed, slower now, deliberate. "Units are on their way. Keep him talking. Do not escalate. Protect the child first." Keanu shifted his eyes to the boy, then back to the man. "He's polite. Good kid," he added, still playing that thin line between conversation and communication. "Told me his mom worries about him a lot." The boy's fingers flinched around the edge of the table. The man's expression hardened. "Yeah, well, his mom worries too much," he said sharply. "We're just grabbing food. We're leaving." He reached for the boy's arm. Instinct surged like electricity through Keanu. Before the man's hand could close, Keanu slid his own hand onto the table, palm open, blocking the space between them by just an inch. No touching, no grabbing, nothing anyone could call aggression. His voice stayed soft. "Hey," he said, eyes steady. "Mind if he finishes his fries? I already said we'd take a picture. Kids remember this stuff." He gave a small, almost self-mocking shrug. "It's one of the only useful things about my job." The man hesitated. Vanity flashed across his features, warring with suspicion. For a second, Keanu saw it. The part of this man who'd grown up on the same movies everyone else had, who'd probably cheered in the dark of a cheap theater at a younger version of him on a screen. "John Wick," the man muttered under his breath, studying him. "Matrix guy?" You could see him calculating, wondering if causing a scene with a celebrity would bring down more heat than he could handle. "Yeah," Keanu said quietly. "That guy, off-duty right now, though." He managed a small grin. "So come on, let him have the story. 2 minutes, I'll even throw in a selfie, free of charge." The boy looked up suddenly, eyes wide, almost a plea. "Don't go, don't leave me." The man's shoulders dropped a fraction. "Fine," he muttered. 2 minutes, then we're out." He sank into the end of the booth, crowding the boy closer to the wall, his knee pressing into the child's thigh like a warning. Keanu lifted the phone again, pretending to angle it for a picture, camera side facing them, screen to his own face. "Okay," he said brightly, leaning in, phone between them like a shield. "Big smiles, yeah." Under the forced cheer, his voice dropped to a thread. "He's sitting with us now," he murmured for the dispatcher alone. "You have maybe 2 minutes, please be fast." Outside, through the smudged glass, faint red and blue reflections began to shimmer on the opposite building. Inside, the man finally noticed them. His eyes narrowed as he realized what those distant flashes meant. His hand slid slowly, inch by inch, toward the inside pocket of his jacket. The boy saw it too, and in that small, stolen second, Keanu had to decide whether to sit still and hope help arrived in time, or move first and risk everything. The room seemed to constrict around that creeping motion of the man's hand vanishing into his jacket. Every sound, the sizzle from the fryers, the chatter at the counter, the faint beeping of some forgotten timer, fell away under the roar of Keanu's heartbeat in his ears. He'd held prop guns, trained for fight scenes, drilled how to fall and how to make fear look good for the camera. None of that prepared him for the weight of a real, hidden weapon inches from a shivering child's ribs. The dispatcher's voice tried to cut through the fog. "Officers are at the scene. Sir, do not engage. Stay calm and keep talking." Keanu knew what she was really saying. Don't be a hero. Don't make this worse. But every instinct in him screamed that silence would be just another kind of violence now. He drew in a slow breath, let his shoulders relax on purpose, and did something he hadn't expected. He laughed, soft and genuine, like an old friend trying to ease the tension at a crowded table. "You know what's funny?" he said, leaning back against the plastic seat. The man's hand froze halfway into his jacket. "People watch those movies and think I'm dangerous. They don't get that in real life. I'm the guy who apologizes when someone bumps into me." He gave a self-effacing shake of his head. "You could probably take me in 2 seconds, man." The man faltered, confused by the disarming honesty. It was such a strange line to throw in a moment like this that it did what Keanu hoped. It cracked the script running in the man's head. "What are you talking about?" the man muttered, but his hand eased out a little, no longer digging so deep. "I'm talking about this," Keanu said quietly, tapping 2 fingers against the table, not looking at the jacket, not looking at the boy's wrist. "You look like a guy who's been cornered a long time. I know that feeling. Life picks people to beat up at random, and sometimes it doesn't stop. But you're here with a kid, which means there's still a line you haven't crossed yet." The man's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right," Keanu replied softly. "I don't know your story. Maybe you think you're protecting him. Maybe you're trying to fix something that feels broken. But I do know what it's like to lose someone you love and spend every night wishing you could go back and make a different choice." His throat tightened around the words, ghosts flickering in the corners of his memory. "You don't want that, not like this." The boy's eyes flicked between them, trying to understand the strange conversation. Outside, the red and blue lights were no longer reflections. A squad car had slid quietly into position near the entrance. Another was blocking the drive-through lane. The dispatcher's voice turned more urgent. "Sir, officers need visual confirmation. Can you move where they can see you and the child without alarming the suspect?" Keanu shifted slightly in the booth, making it look like he needed to stretch his legs. "Hey," he said lightly, speaking to the man. "Picture S gonna look better by the window. Light back here's doing no one any favors." He tugged his cap brim with a crooked grin. "Come on, help me out. I'm trying not to look like I live under a bridge." The joke landed just enough. The man huffed something almost like a laugh, suspicion loosening its grip by a hair. "You Hollywood types," he muttered, but he let the boy scoot out of the booth, his hand still resting on the child's shoulder like a clamp. Keanu slid out on his own side, standing up slowly, palms visible, heart pounding. The phone stayed at his ear. "We're moving toward the window," he murmured for the dispatcher. "He still has his hand on the kid. I can't see the gun yet." As they stepped into the open space by the front windows, the restaurant's customers finally seemed to sense the wrongness pressing in on them. A mother at the play area froze, eyes going from the police cars outside to the man's too tight grip on the boy. A group of teenagers whispered, one of them nudging another and pointing in confusion, not at Keanu's presence, but at the tense stiffness in his shoulders. Fear spread like a current through still water. Keanu caught the cashier's eye, the same nervous teenager from before. Very slowly, with the smallest tilt of his head, he looked toward the back door near the kitchen. The kid swallowed, understanding more than he wanted to, and began calling to his coworker in a voice that shook just a bit too much. "Hey, we need to check the soda machine in the back," he stammered. "Everyone from the play area, can you, come see the toys in the back real quick? Limited edition or something." It was clumsy, but it was enough. One by one, parents began herding their children toward the back, trying to look casual and failing. The man noticed. His fingers dug harder into the boy's shoulder. "What's going on?" he snapped, eyes darting from the shifting crowd to the flashing lights outside. His other hand slipped all the way into his jacket this time, and when it came out, there was no more guessing. A dull black pistol appeared, half hidden against the boy's small chest. The room froze. A fry slipped from someone's hand and hit the floor with an absurdly loud smack. A woman covered her mouth, eyes wide with silent terror. The teenagers at the corner booth slid down in their seats, trying to become invisible. Keanu's own fear narrowed to a bright, searing point, but he didn't move back. He stepped forward. The gun wavered, the barrel swinging between Keanu's chest and the exit sign. The man's breathing turned ragged. "Don't," he hissed. "Don't come any closer, I just need to get to the car. We're leaving, nobody has to get hurt." The boy's face had gone pale, lips pressed together so tightly they looked white. His small hands shook where they were trapped between the man's arm and his own ribs. "You're already on every camera in this place," Keanu said calmly, voice dropping low enough that it felt like it existed only for the three of them. "You step outside like this, they won't ask questions, they'll just shoot. And then this kid has to watch you die in front of him. Is that the part of the story you want stuck in his head forever?" A shout came from outside, muffled through the glass. "Drop the weapon, step away from the child!" The man flinched, panic flaring in his eyes. For a second, the gun dipped away from the boy's body toward the floor. Keanu saw the opening. Training, instinct, something older than either kicked in. He took one more step closer, putting himself squarely between the man and the rest of the restaurant. His knees felt like water. His hands trembled so badly he laced his fingers together to hide it. "Look at me," he said, voice shaking but steadying with every word. "Not them, not the cops, me. You don't have to be the worst thing you've ever done. Not today." The man stared at him like he was from another planet. "What would you know about that?" Keanu thought of funeral homes, hospital corridors, headlines printed with his private heartbreak like it was just another trivia fact. "More than you think," he answered quietly. "I know what it's like to feel like life took everything and left you with nothing but bad choices, but this is still a choice, right now." Behind them, a small, desperate sound broke through the tension. The boy had started to cry, silent, shaking tears rolling down his cheeks, his whole body quivering. His voice came out as a thin, broken whisper. "Please," he choked. "I just want my mom." The gun shook harder in the man's hand. And as his eyes flicked down to the child's face, something in his expression cracked. But whether it was mercy or madness breaking through, no one in that brightly lit, too quiet McDonald's could tell yet. The man's eyes glossed over, some buried emotion rising so fast it almost looked like pain. His grip on the gun tightened even as his fingers trembled, the metal bobbing a few inches from the boy's shoulder. For a brief, horrifying moment, Keanu saw two possible futures colliding in that shaking hand. One where a child's scream was followed by a gunshot, and another where none of them would ever forget what mercy felt like. Outside, officers were moving into formation. Through the corner of his eye, Keanu could see their vests, hear the faint crackle of radios. Inside, the dispatcher's voice was now a constant murmur in his ear, every phrase a lifeline. "He is armed. He is unstable. Keep him talking. You are not alone." But in that little bubble of air between the three of them, it felt like they were on an island far from the rest of the world. The boy's sobs came in small, hiccuping waves he tried to swallow down like he was used to getting in trouble for crying. That tiny effort to be good in the middle of a nightmare hit Keanu like a punch. He took a breath, feeling the sting behind his own eyes. "Hey," he said softly, addressing the boy now, but knowing the man would hear every word. "You're doing so well, you're so brave. None of this is your fault, okay? Not 1 second of it." The child blinked up at him through tears. For the first time since he'd sat in that booth, Keanu let the walls around his own pain drop. "I had a little girl once," he said, voice roughening. "She never got to grow up. I would give anything to have had one more minute with her." The confession slipped out raw, unpolished, like he'd pulled it straight out of the wound. I can't stand the idea of another kid losing their life or losing who they are because a grown man didn't know how to stop." The man froze, his knuckles went white on the gun. "You think I want to hurt him?" he rasped. "They took my boy, they took my son from me, courts, papers, lawyers, said I wasn't fit, said I was dangerous." His face twisted with bitterness. "Maybe I am, but at least I came back for him. At least I didn't just let them take him like some coward." The truth of his story hit the room like a gust of wind. A couple of the retreating parents paused in the doorway to the back, holding their own children closer. The boy stiffened under the man's arm, confusion and terror warring in his eyes. "I'm not your son," he whispered, the words breaking as they came out. "My dad's name is Miguel. You're not him, you're not him." The man flinched, wounded by the rejection, even though it was only the truth. "I know I'm not," he snapped automatically, and then stopped, realization dawning at what he just admitted out loud. His eyes darted to the cameras, to the people still watching, to Keanu's steady, unwavering stare. For a brief instant, there was nothing in his face but a raw, exhausted grief that had curdled into something terrible. Keanu seized the opening. "So this isn't about him," he said quietly, nodding toward the boy. "This is about the hole inside you that nobody helped you fill. I'm sorry for what you've lost, I really am, but stealing somebody else's child doesn't fix that, it just spreads the pain." He took another small step closer until the barrel of the gun was pressed lightly into his own chest instead of the boy's shoulder. The chill of the metal seeped through his hoodie. "Give him to me," Keanu said. "Let me take him. Let me walk him out. You can still walk out alive too." The man stared at him in disbelief. "You'd do that," he spat. "You'd stand there and take the bullet if I pull this trigger for some stranger's kid." Keanu didn't look away. "I've stood in front of fake guns for fake stakes half my life," he answered. "If the universe is asking me to stand in front of a real one for something that matters, I don't want to say no." His voice dipped to a whisper only the man could hear. "You don't really want to kill anybody. You didn't bring that gun because you wanted a body count. You brought it because you were scared. Scared nobody would listen otherwise. I'm listening now. So are they." He tilted his head slightly toward the window, toward the officers and their drawn weapons. "You can put it down and walk out with your hands up. They'll take you alive if you give them the chance." For a moment, it seemed like the whole restaurant was holding its breath. The teenager at the counter had tears on his cheeks. A woman near the door murmured a prayer under her breath in Spanish, rosary beads clutched tight. The boy's small fingers had inched around the man's wrist, not in a struggle, but in a quiet, instinctive plea. "Please," the child said again, softer now. "Don't make them shoot you. I don't want to see that." Those words did something none of Keanu's calm logic had managed. The man's shoulders sagged. His grip on the gun loosened just a fraction. You could see the battle behind his eyes, the part of him that had been running on rage and fear for so long it was the only fuel he knew, and the flicker of a man who still remembered what it felt like to be gentle with a child. His hand began to lower. "Good," Keanu breathed. That's it, man. You're doing the right thing. Just keep going," pointed at the floor. "There you go. You're not your worst day. You hear me? You're more than this." The barrel dipped inch by inch until it was aimed at the grease-stained tiles. Outside, an officer's voice shouted again, this time with the edge of hope threaded through authority. "We see you lowering the weapon. Keep going. Put it on the ground." The man swallowed hard. Tears he'd been fighting finally spilled over, tracking down the stubble on his cheeks. His whole body shook with the effort of stepping back from the edge he'd been standing on for so long. "I didn't mean," he started, voice breaking. "I just wanted someone to see me, to see that I—" A metal tray crashed to the floor in the kitchen with a deafening clang. The sound exploded through the tension like a gunshot. The man jerked in reflexive terror, every muscle snapping taut as a wire. His finger spasmed on the trigger, sending the gun whipping back upward toward Keanu's chest. The boy screamed. And in that split second, with the weapon rising again and the world tilting off its fragile axis, Keanu had to decide whether to dive, to grab, or to simply stand his ground and trust that the fragile humanity he'd seen in this man wasn't gone yet.